are freaking sick. Coilovers on a budget, baby.
We got coilovers for the WRX, boys.
I'm excited for this video because if you guys didn't see the video where we bought the WRX, I'm just gonna insert the clip of how the suspension is on this car. So we gotta fix that.
I decided to pick up a full set of Raceland coilovers for this car because, like you guys already know, this is a budget build. We're basically just building a winter beater that I do not have to care about on the road from rust or rock chips or anything like that. I just want it to look half decent, to still rip like a WRX should, and be reliable.
And I know the term reliable and Subaru tend to not go together, but we're gonna see how long she lasts.
Straight out of the box, these Raceland coilovers come with the 2 rears and the 2 fronts. Then they come with spanner wrenches for adjusting the coils. The preload on these is not set from factory like BC Racing does. These springs are loose. You can like literally wiggle them around. So we'll have to set the preload on those springs. Then it also came with this box. I'm assuming this is instructions or something like that for installing these. Oh, maybe not. There's like something foam inside of here. We literally got the real Raceland coilovers and we got the Wish Raceland coilovers.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys in this video. I've installed coilovers before. I know how to dial in ride height, but I have never got a set of coilovers that did not have the preload on the springs set from factory. So I gotta set the preload on these ones, which I'm excited for. We get to learn something new today. And you ain't having a good day until you learn something new. So this should be fun.
I'm not gonna go through and show you guys how to pull the factory struts and everything like that because it is pretty self-explanatory. All you guys gotta do is zip the 2 mounting bolts for the strut in the front off on the bottom. These ones are each going different ways, which I don't know why. Someone clearly replaced these before. Then you're gonna take off your bolt for your ABS/wheel speed sensor, take the bolt off that mounts your brake line, and then you're gonna have the 3 12mm nuts up top that you're gonna take out, and then that whole strut assembly should come right out. And it's the same for the other side on the front too. Then for the rear, same idea. You guys can see these struts are blown right out. There's oil all over them. So like I said before, you're just gonna zip both these bottom bolts out. Then on these rear ones, the brake line is actually hard mounted to the body of the strut. There's no bolt on it. So you're just gonna take a pry bar, pop that little clip off of there, then you can take the brake line off. And that's literally all there is to it at the back. Because in the hatch, all you gotta do is pop these little covers off and your 3 bolts are easily accessible right there. Then that strut should drop out.
But the thing I am gonna go over is setting up your coilovers before you get them put in the car. Now this is actually super easy to set the spring preload if you're not going for any crazy stance or anything like that. I'm just going for some good ride quality and to stiffen up the suspension a bit on this car. So I watched the actual Raceland video on their website, and all you have to do is tighten the lock collar up until the spring has tension on it, and that's it. But I'm gonna go a little bit further than that to make sure that they're all the same all around.
So the first thing you guys are gonna do to set these is you're gonna separate your rears from your fronts, which we've already done. Fronts are on the left side here, rears are on the right side there. Then what you're gonna do is get your spanner wrenches taken out of the bag.
Once you guys get both of your spanner wrenches taken out, you're gonna have a big one and you're gonna have a small one. The small one's obviously gonna be for the smaller collar, the big one's gonna be for the bigger collar. We're not going for any fancy ride height or anything like that, trying to bottom out the spring to absolutely slam the shit out of this thing. I just want the springs to have good tension, and then we can lower it with the threads because I'm not gonna be dropping this thing more than like 2 inches. So the first thing that I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take this bottom collar here and I'm just gonna tighten that up with the small spanner wrench and hold this bottom piece here and just tighten it up. That way I can use this to hold it. Then you're gonna get your big spanner wrench and you're gonna back out this top collar until the spring has no preload left on it. Once it's completely loose, you guys can see here, I can literally move the entire spring on the whole coilover assembly. That means there's no tension on it. So what we're gonna do to get tension on it is the opposite of what I just did. I just did that to show you guys what it looks like when there's no tension on the spring. Now we're gonna take our big spanner wrench and we are going to tighten these in the opposite direction until the spring does not move whatsoever. And it's gonna have a good amount of tension on it. Then once we do that and we get good tension on the spring, all I'm gonna do is get a tape measure and I'm gonna measure from bottom of the spring to the top of the spring, the length of the spring once it's compressed, and then I'm gonna compress my other front coilover to the exact same length. Then once you get your preload set, all you're gonna do to lock that in is again, take your small and your big spanner wrenches. Take your small wrench, put it around this lower upper collar. Take the big wrench, put it along the upper preload adjustment collar. Actually, you know what? Before I do this, I'm gonna unlock this one real quick, because this thing is gonna be driving in the winter. So I can pretty much guarantee you these threads are gonna seize up if I don't put some anti-seize on them. So I'm gonna put some anti-seize on the threads here, because Raceland actually says they will not warranty a seized lock collar. So we're gonna prevent that as much as we can. Now I'm gonna take these two collars, now that we got anti-seize on there, and lock them up. Snug them up just like that. Now once we get both of them snugged up, we should not need to touch those two lock collars again. Now just to help you guys out, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see the tape measure here, but basically what I did was I found the part where the spring ends, which if I rotate this, you guys can see right there. And I measure from the top of the spring here to the bottom of the spring here. And that's my full preload. And you want your preload to be the same on both springs in the front, and then your two rear springs have to be the same. So measuring from top to bottom here, you can see I'm right at 9 inches, and this spring don't move when I grab it. Now I'm gonna measure this other one and just double check, and I'm perfect right at 9 inches. So the preload on both of these front coilovers is set exactly the same. Now again on this one, measuring from the top to the bottom, we got 7 and 5/8, and then on this one, we also have 7 and 5/8. And this spring ain't going anywhere. There's a good amount of preload on there, so we can get these lock collars tightened right up. Oh, tight as a tiger. Now, the only other thing that you want to watch for, and you're only going to have to worry about this with your front coilovers, the rear ones don't matter because there's no camber adjustment up top, but on your front ones, you guys can see that there is camber adjustment bolts. And these camber adjustment bolts need to go horizontally. So when they're in the car, they need to go sideways to the side of the car like that when you mount it. So you mount it like this and they're going forwards, you're not going to be able to adjust camber, you're going to be adjusting the caster.
I figured I'd stop after the first one just to show you guys what I did here. So I did put new rotors on the car because the previous owner decided it was a good idea to slap new brake pads on these worn ass rotors. So I serviced up the brand new brake pads that he had on there, and then I put some new rotors on. For the coilover itself, this top bolt here, you're gonna notice is different than the bottom bolt. And now you guys can probably see I have both bolts going the same direction because that's the way they're supposed to be from factory. Then I got the ABS sensor bracket installed. Then also the brake line bolt installed. And that top bolt that's different there is literally just your eccentric. It's the factory camber adjustment bolt. So after you guys install coilovers, you definitely want to do a wheel alignment on the car, which I will do a wheel alignment, but I kind of need the engine in the car first and I need it driving. But that top bolt you'll notice is just like an oval shape. Just make sure you put it in the top and not the bottom. Then for my coilover, what I did was I measured the entire length of the coilover compared to the factory strut. So you guys will notice how high up that rotor's sitting now. I think the way that I set this thing's gonna be slammed, but that's okay. We can always readjust it. Because look how much space there is between the rotor and the wheel well in the back. And now look at the front. You probably can't tell on camera, but she's gonna be slammed titties. So if you look at the factory strut compared to the coilover, the reason I set it so much smaller is because the factory spring compresses so much and sinks in so much, whereas the coilover is a lot more stiff, so it's not gonna move as much. So the full length of that strut is gonna compress to hopefully about the size I set the coilover.
So basically what I did was I measured from the top hat of the strut all the way to the bottom, which was about 22 inches. Then I measured from the top hat of the coilover to the bottom, and I set both of my coilovers at 17 inches in length. Then what I do to make sure that they're the exact same height when I install them is I get a vernier caliper here, and on this end of the caliper, it's gonna measure the distance between these two fingers. So the distance between my fingers right now is 1.581 inches. You guys can't read that because it's too far away, but you get the point. I'm just gonna measure from the bottom collar once it's tightened right up, all the way to this top lock collar, which right now is 2.18 inches, but it's not tightened up, which is close because the one that I just installed was 2.2 inches.
Then up top, just to show you guys what I meant about that camber adjustment, here's your 3 bolts up top to mount the coilover to the strut tower. Then you want to make sure that those adjustments right there, like I said, are going horizontal and not this way. That way you can adjust your camber with those. But that's to adjust when you go to do a wheel alignment and you want to see how much camber you want to get out of it.
So now that you guys know exactly how I installed everything on this side, I'm gonna go ahead and get the right front knocked out. Another thing I do want to mention about these coils is make sure you're putting them in on the right side. There will be stickers on the coilover, and this one says front right. That's what that FR stands for.
That coil over there said front left, which is where I put it.
So make sure you guys don't mix that up. Let's go knock out the other side.
I got like a quarter of the way through this, and then I just remembered that I need to replace the axle on this side too. Because if you guys can see from up here, that inner CV boot is completely torn. So while I'm doing this, just so that I don't have to disconnect the lower control arm or anything like that, since we're taking the strut off anyways, and I can move the whole steering knuckle, I'm gonna buzz that axle nut out, use a pry bar, pop the axle out of the transmission. Hopefully I can get it out because the transmission is completely loose right now because it's not mounted to the engine. So she might move quite a bit when I try and pop it out,
but I think we'll be able to get it. Doesn't hurt to try.
WRX axles are weird as hell to change compared to STIs. They don't even have an inner spline tooth that slides into the transmission with a circlip. It's just a pin that slides onto a shaft that's already in the transmission, and these teeth match up to it. So all I had to do was just slide the pin out of there. I could take this axle right out, and I got a brand new pin with the new axle, so I can use that because I kind of destroyed the other one pounding it out. But this is actually kind of nice because if you guys look in there, you don't even need to replace the axle seal. That inner little chode stub shaft there just stays in the transmission, and then the axle seal stays too. I can just slide the new axle onto that, put the new pin in, and she's mint. Oh, that's a solid click. Mint. This side's all finished up. Axle nut is torqued and I staked it with a punch there. The factory torque spec for that axle is 137 foot-pounds, so I did 140. Right front coilover's in, and I got the bottom lock ring tightened up. I didn't tighten it too much because we're gonna have to make adjustments again anyways. But the new rotor's also on, pads are serviced up, and the new axle is in.
It is actually a couple days later. I went and got a haircut because my hair was getting too long, and I haven't worked on this in a couple days because that axle was pissing me off, not gonna lie. That pin that you have to put in is a pain in the ass. Because the aftermarket axle, the two holes weren't perfectly lined up, so I did have to get a Dremel and trim it out a little bit to get the pin in. Which, if you guys take a look down there, you can see that I got the new pin in.
But I ended up having to stand in the engine bay and pound down with a punch and a hammer to get that in. It was not fun. Now that we got the fronts all finished up, I'm gonna get the wheels slapped on for now. And we are gonna set the car on the ground even though the engine's not in it and just see where we're at for adjustment. I'm probably not gonna make any final adjustments until we get the engine back in the car, which will hopefully be in one of the next couple videos.
So let's get the front wheels slapped back on, and then we can move on to getting the rear coilovers in.
This wheel has definitely seen some curves in its lifetime, Jesus. got the left rear coilover completely installed now. Rotor is replaced and the pads are all serviced up. Again, you want to make sure both your bolts are going the same direction, which in this case, they both have to go facing the axle or else you're not getting that bolt in because that CV boot's in the way. The only thing I found when I was swapping that out is that my e-brake shoes are clapped. They're like almost metal on metal. So we're gonna need some new e-brake shoes, but for now, I just slapped it all back together. It takes like 10 minutes to swap those e-brake shoes out. So I'll have to take it apart again to swap those out in the future. I got the coilover installed on the right rear now. I wanted to show you guys how messed up these e-brake shoes are, but on this side, they're actually not as bad. If you guys look at the lining here on the shoe, you can still see there's like 1 mil on there. On the other side, it's almost right down to the metal on the brake shoe. So this side's not as sketchy as the other side. When I replace them, I'm gonna replace both sides anyways, but I don't have any on me right now. So just like the other side, we're gonna get all this stuff pulled apart on the e-brakes, all the springs, that clip, get the pins pulled off and those springs pulled off, get the shoes out, clean them up with an angle grinder, lube them all up, get the rotor back on there, get the pad serviced, get the pads back on there. And then once I get all 4 wheels and tires on, I actually do want to drop the car on the ground just to see how it's sitting, even though the engine's not in there for the front. So we don't know how much weight's actually going to sag the coilovers out. I still want to set it down and see where we're at for adjustment just to make sure we're the same on both sides. I'm kind of excited to see how dirt nasty low I accidentally made this, because I made each coilover like 4 inches shorter than the factory strut. So hopefully this thing ain't tucking. Everything is installed on this side now. E-brake's all adjusted up and she's good to go. Got the lock ring on the bottom of the coil tightened up. And now we finally got all 4 coilovers installed. Now I'm gonna get all 4 wheels slapped on this thing and drop it on the ground. But before I do that, I'm gonna show you guys one quick little trick before dropping the car, just to make sure that you're not lifting the car up a million times and making your ride height adjustment take forever. So like I said a little bit earlier in the video, the best thing to do is to measure your gap between these 2 lock collars right here, which is 3.02 inches about. Now we're gonna head over to the other side and see what the other side's at. All right, now we're looking at our right rear, and the height of our right rear is about almost the exact same. This one's 3.026. I think the other one is 3.027. You are never gonna notice a thousandth of an inch with coilover adjustment. So we're gonna say these ones are both the same. And before we put the coils in, I showed you guys that we measured the spring when we compress it, and those were both 9 inches in the rear. So if our springs are adjusted to the same preload and our height adjustment is both 3.02 inches between the lock collars on them, they should both be the exact same height right now in the rear. Whether they're too high or too low, I don't know that yet. We gotta set it on the ground to see what our tire to fender gap is. And in the front, honestly, I haven't even looked to see if they're the same at all yet, because there's no engine in the car, which is a lot of weight missing from the front of the car. So even if I adjust these coils perfect, they're still gonna be sitting a bit high in the front, and then when the engine gets put back in the car, it's gonna sag them down a bit. So let's get the rear wheels back on the car, get this thing dropped onto the ground, and let's see how low this thing turned out to be. Ooh, that's like less than 2 fingers. It's not even on the ground yet. She gonna be dirt nasty low. Oh. What the hell? I just rolled my fenders without even actually rolling the fenders. This thing is slammed right now. Oh baby, what a beater that is. Curved wheels and rust, boys. That's what we like to see. Let's hope this evens out when we drop the other side.
gotta raise it. I actually caved this fender in when I dropped the car like that. Like it's like a little bit rolled now.
So on this side of the car, I can get kind of one finger in there if I go straight up. So that is definitely too low for a winter beater. And this side is literally touching the quarter panel. I don't think I could even roll this car forward. Like it's stuffed right in there. But the front, because there's no engine in it, we still got like a good 2-finger gap there, which is honestly probably what I'm gonna go for on this thing all around is 2 fingers. And on the driver's front, we should have about the same. Yeah, 2 fingers. I drove this car in the shop before on stock suspension, and oh my god, is this thing lower now. Like it looks slammed compared to stock. This is crazy. I didn't even think I went that much lower. You know what? This might be a hot boy winter because this thing is all-wheel drive, so even if it's low, we can still plow through snow. And I think it'd be kind of fun. I got winter tires on it, and the rims are curved as shit. The body's rusty as hell, so why not send it? So I'm gonna have a video coming out soon specifically on how to set the height properly on your coilovers and how to get it all dialed in. Make sure you like the video if you are excited for the first start on the WRX, and if you're excited to see us bomb through the snow in this thing. Peace out. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Oh, and to you OG subscribers or people that just watch all the way to the end of the video, the SCI is broken again and you guys get a sneak peek. I don't think I'm ever gonna buy ETS shit again because that's like the 3rd weld that is broken on this turbo kit. So yeah, you guys will see how we're gonna fix that soon, or if I'm gonna get mad at ETS because they want me to pay to ship the thing down to the States for them to fix it, which is gonna cost me more than it would cost me to just fix the out pipe here, when they could just send me out a new one. I'm kinda mad because I already spent $600 building a custom downpipe because they're sucked. I'm done talking now. Goodbye.